This is a quiet place. No, not this quiet place. This quiet place. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm talking about today is A Quiet Place, a movie by John Krasinski starring him and his wife Emily Blount. And this is a pretty good movie. Not great, but pretty good. It's entertaining. It's a very thoughtful, in many ways clever horror movie for the most part. I mean, you could even think of it as science fiction really, but I put it more on the horror side. And as I said, it's a pretty good movie and it's clever, but the problem is it's way too clever for its own good, in that the screenplay could have probably gone through a few rewrites. It's an interesting movie, but it's not a very consistent movie. If you haven't seen A Quiet Place yet, and this is not a spoiler, it revolves around some indeterminate time in the future, and these creatures exist that detect you only based upon sound. So they're effectively blind, as far as I'm aware, and the movie indicates the same. And they detect you by sound, and so if you make noise, it brings them on. Now this is, in theory, a cool idea, and as I said, it's clever. But the biggest problem with this is that the movie doesn't follow through with it. It plays with it very loosely, and that's not good. If you create that concept, and that's what powers, that's the engine that powers your movie, you have to stick with it. And this movie, at numerous cases, doesn't. It cheats. And that kind of bothers me a little bit. Another thing is that it's predictable. Check out the opening with the little boy and the space shuttle. You will well, at least I did, and I think you will too. You'll pretty much call exactly what's going to happen because it's predictable. And it's not, again, let me emphasize, it's not bad by any stretch, but it's a lot more, it's not nearly as clever as it likes to think it is. And that opening was predictable. I saw it coming a mile away, and I literally would go, oh, he's going to take those batteries. And he did. It's well shot, it looks good, interesting premise, but it's almost as if the movie doesn't have faith in that premise, or it could have used a few more rewrites. I mentioned earlier that these creatures track by sound. Now, the thing is, there are sounds everywhere. You've probably heard the term, if a tree falls in a forest, does it make a sound? Which is irritating and stupid, because sound is not determinate on the hearer. It happens. So a tree in a forest, and of course it makes a sound. Whether we're here or there, to hear it or not, is literally irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It makes a sound. And so in nature, there are tons of sounds all the time. And never mind in cities. And so the idea that these creatures can key in on particularly human sounds is nonsensical. Well, not sorta, in the sense that if that human sound's a voice, maybe. If it's the sound of something falling, probably not. Why? Because things fall all the time. Things fall everywhere. Cities, forests, parks, whatever. Things fall. Wind makes things fall. So the idea that these things could key in on the sound of something falling is nonsense. The movie should have explained this concept more. For example, if the creatures clued in on rhythmic sounds, that would make sense, because you'll notice that sounds can be very random. Like I just mentioned a tree falling. It falls, there's accompanying noises, and it stops. There's no rhythm to it. And rhythms can even happen in nature. Again, wind blowing through leaves can create a certain rhythm. But on the whole, it's not quite as predictable as a human rhythm, as in sounds of you walking, sounds of you doing this, that, and the other. So if the movie had explained that more, it would have been more satisfying. As it stood, it was just a great concept, but nonsensical concept. And keep in mind the nature of the movie. It was still nonsensical. And I mentioned the batteries earlier. There's another scene later in the movie involving a nail. You know exactly what's going to happen. This movie suffers from being so predictable. I mean, I winced when I saw the scene nonetheless, but it's predictable. It sets up beats that you know indisputably what's going to happen. And that's not a great thing, because it makes your movie predictable. But on the whole, A Quiet Place is one of the better horror movies in the sense that it's very thoughtful, it has a clever concept, and on the whole, it's enjoyable. But it's not as good as people make it out to be. And in fact, it's sort of silly in some respects. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in a review.